Hey everybody, I'm Rebecca Caro and welcome to another episode of Rowing Chat. This week I'm joined by Matt Langridge. Matt, welcome.
Hello, welcome.
Now, can you kick off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background in the sport of rowing?
Well, obviously you've introduced me. I'm Matt Langridge. I've been rowing in the team for quite a long time now. Originally started rowing when I was 14, actually inspired by the Olympics, from watching Steve Redgrave and Matthew Pinsent win their only gold medal. So started off when I was 14, watching Matthew Pinsent and Steve Redgrave win Britain's only gold medal, obviously not Steve's and Matt's only gold medal, at the Atlanta Olympics. That inspired me to get into rowing, and then from that I've won the Junior World Championships when I was 18 in the single, and I've been to 4 Olympics. Got the silver in Beijing, the bronze in London, and the gold in Rio.
3. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, you said you started as a young boy in Northwich. Tell us a little bit about who was your first coach and what it was like in the club as a junior.
Northwich was, for me, when I initially started it, I think it was just a really fun club to be part of, and definitely my early years, I just really enjoyed being at the boat club. It was just a really fun social environment, so I kind of enjoyed being down there, and I enjoyed spending time there. Inevitably, because I was down there, I did some training, and then the more training I did, the better I got, and then the better I got, the more I would do some training. So it was really quite easy, the early part of my career. My first really personal coach was a guy called Paul Rafferty, who obviously was volunteer, had a full-time job, and I think he, with some of the help of some of the other coaches, there was a guy there who ran the junior program called Mike Polferman, and I think Mike saw potential in me, realised I needed probably a little bit more attention, so handed me over to Paul, and then Paul became my individual coach in the single. Very early on, I was identified that I should probably aim for the single rather than being part of the rest of the juniors down there in the crew boats, and he identified me, put me in the single with Paul, and off we went really. And then from there, it kind of very quickly seemed to find success. And as I said, the more I enjoyed it, the more I wanted to train. And yeah, I think for me, it was a great club to be part of. It was a really nice sociable club, sociable hours, which I enjoyed. I'm not sure I'd have stuck at it with some of the hours that some other clubs keep. It wasn't, when I first started, it was an 11 o'clock start, so yeah, it was not along the normal rowing, the normal early mornings as in most rowing clubs. So I think for me that definitely made it easier. And yeah, it was just a really fun, enjoyable place to be part of.
So you obviously have had a long rowing career and a 15-year international career. Out of all of those years of rowing, which year was your best one and why?
I guess that obviously now is a difficult one, because winning the Golden Rio, you'd always straight away put that as the number one. Obviously, for me, it was the thing I've been working for so long. I'd actually say I've got out of my 15 years or 19 years of rowing since I started, I think I've probably got 3 enjoyable ones. Top 3 of the most enjoyable ones. Obviously Rio, I give you, that's just a given. Winning in Rio, finally achieving what I wanted to achieve, was fantastic. 2001, when I won the single as a junior, I think obviously still, even though I've gone on to win medals at the Olympics, win senior world championships. I would still, for me, put that as a really high up there in terms of achievement. I think for me, the thing that stands out the most about that is the fact that I was a junior training in Northwich with my coach. I actually had two coaches that year. So I had my club coach, Paul Rafferty, and then I also had a coach that the squad gave to me, a guy called Philippe Salvini. So it was working with those two guys to really achieve something. And obviously at that point as a junior, we didn't have the support and the network that you get as a senior at the GB rowing team. It was very much more self-driven. We're training out of Northwich Rowing Club, or we did some stuff down at Pangbourne, but it was kind of a self-driven project between the three of us. And to go there and really achieve that was, for me, still one of my highlights of my career. And I guess the other year I would probably say was 2011, when we won the World Championships in Bled in the 4. And I would just put that up there because that was, for me, just a really enjoyable year of rowing. I think we mixed really well in the 4. It came together very quickly, and sometimes you get crews that just click and everything works, everything's easy, and that was definitely one of those years. It was just a joy to go out on the boat every day, right from the very first stroke. And yeah, it's kind of a rarity in rowing, but when it comes along, it's definitely a nice feeling. And that was definitely one of those crews that I've done where straight away it clicked, and it was we never lost a race, and it was just a really enjoyable year of rowing.
Who were your crewmates?
It was Alex Gregory, Rick Edgington, and Tom James.
Fantastic. Now, you're a slightly unusual international athlete in that you have both been a sculler and a sweep rower. And we were chatting beforehand, and you reminded me of your first attempt at sweep in a pair with Tom James. How hard was it to switch?
Yeah, I've in terms of the rowing, I think I've done a lot. I don't want to class myself as a jack of all trades, but I think I've raced and medalled at an international event in every boat class, every Olympic boat class. So I've definitely done a lot. I've done single, double, quad, pair, 4-8. So I've got experience in every boat class, and yeah, I think the switch initially was quite successful. I think I picked it up reasonably quickly. I got the basics reasonably quickly. I had done a little bit of sweep with doing the 8's head for Leander, and the odd bit of sweeping, but certainly not a lot. There are subtleties that I think the coaches failed to tell me, which I think sometimes people at that level just expect you to know. Obviously, definitely technical subtleties where I think they just expected the fact that I'd been rowing already at that point and already been to one Olympics that I would already know. And I definitely didn't get taught, and I had to learn as I went along.
What were they? Give us an example.
Just the squaring and feathering with different hands, the shoulder heights, just also being able to rotate. As a sculler, you go very straight up and down, and it's very symmetrical, and then suddenly you expect it just to go one way the whole time. And I think it was a given that I would have known all this, but obviously having never really done much rowing, I didn't. But I think I made the switch reasonably comfortably, reasonably easily. Obviously, the pair was probably the greatest challenge because you are totally reliant on your side. In the bigger boats, I think I picked it up quite easily, but then with the pair, that was probably the bigger challenge. But having been in small boats a lot, I think it's quite a smooth transition. Not quite the result I would have liked at the end of the season at the World Championships, but we'll skip over that bit.
So obviously, not everything it smells of roses all the time. Tell us a little bit about mistakes that happened to you or you created and what you learned from them? Can you think of one in particular?
I can think of more than one. I don't know if we've got long enough in this interview for me to list all the mistakes and learning that I've had out of my career. I think, obviously, as an athlete, you make lots of mistakes, and you learn a lot from every mistake you make. Certainly, in terms of training, I think my biggest mistake that I'd been making for quite a long time in terms of my training was, which actually, in some ways, I only really learned to put right in my final year. Well, okay, we don't know yet; it's my final year, but I only really in the Olympian 2016 finally got on top of was I've always really struggled with consistency in my training. As an athlete, I used to get ill and injured quite a lot. And then in my final year, I realized that I tried a lot of things to put this consistency right, to try and limit the amount of time I spent ill and injured. And one of the things I learned and realized was actually I needed to prioritize sessions more than others, so that certainly in the team we do so much training that you can't do every session 100%. I know, as we always talk about, how as top level athletes you have to give it 100%. Well, you can't do that for every single session. You have to prioritize sessions, and I think that was my problem for a long time. And if I could go back to my earlier self 10, 15 years ago, I would definitely give him that bit of advice that sometimes the body can only cope with so much, and you definitely have to prioritize sessions. And that doesn't mean that you don't do the sessions. It just means that sometimes you have to take a step back and just do them as they are written on the program, rather than always trying to push for that every extra inch, every stroke. And I think for me, just backing off, I realized that actually it was much more important to do 100% of the program with 90% of the effort than 80% of the program with 100% of the effort. So I realized actually just backing off a little bit in some of the sessions and then prioritizing others just meant that it gave me more consistency. And I wasn't having that period where I'd train really well for 2-3 weeks, then get ill or injured, and then be off for a week and almost have to start again. I was able to find a lot more consistency in my training, and actually my final year I didn't get ill, or I think I missed one day through illness, which for me was a massive achievement, because previous to that I really struggled, certainly in the winter.
So what was the thing that led you to this insight?
I think it was one of the, for a long time I probably always knew it, but ultimately it comes down to confidence. When you're in a team and a squad environment that we are, it's hard to not go at everything 100%. I mean, we're sat next to each other on the ergo every day. We're looking across. We see what everybody's splits are. It's a very, very competitive environment, and it's hard. It takes a lot of confidence to go, okay, actually, I'm just going to do what is right for me, and it doesn't matter that I'm going three seconds slower on my split than the guy next to me. So it does ultimately come down to confidence that you're doing the right thing for you, and you're not always racing, because in that we are very competitive, and that's why we're in that squad and in that environment. But it is sometimes hard to get carried away with it and overcook it. And I think I mean, actually for me, probably one of the things that really helped me was Stan Ludus had been away at Oxford. I know at Oxford they have a very prescriptive training program. When he came back into the team, he was very confident in terms of the splits he was going to pull and the training he was going to do, and he went about that. And obviously then when it came to ergo tests or any kind of testing, he would perform really well. And I think although for me, even though he's a much younger athlete than me, it kind of, watching him do it and be successful gave me confidence. Well, actually, okay, well, if this guy who's, I don't know how many years my junior he is, but I should know, 20, 21, 8 years my junior, can have the confidence to do it, well I should as well. And I think that's for me as well. It's really important to realise as athletes you can learn off everybody around you. You shouldn't always look for people that you see as your kind of seniors, or you see people. I mean, I wouldn't in any way say Stan was below me next, but obviously he is my junior. So I think people would naturally look at the older athletes for advice and things to learn from. But actually, you can learn from anyone. People have always got something useful, and it's up to you what you take from them. But I think for me, it really helped me and gave me the confidence. Actually, okay, that is the right training, and that's the right way for me to approach it.
So, looking back over your career, what other changes did you notice as you matured as an athlete?
You don't recover as quickly. I think it's one. It definitely also takes you a lot longer as you get older within the team. I mean, I don't like to think of myself as that old, but you do notice as you go through your career that when you come back to training after those 3 weeks off, it takes a lot longer to get back in shape again. I used to always think I could get fit quite quickly, and now I know that it definitely takes a lot longer. And sometimes doing nothing for those 3 weeks isn't worth the pain when you get back to training. So it's almost better to just keep yourself ticking over rather than just do nothing. So yeah, I think obviously it's just how quickly you recover, and also you definitely can't go out and celebrate as much as you used to be able to. That also takes a lot longer to recover from as well. So you definitely have to limit your days celebrating after races.
Welcome to the rest of your life. It's downhill from here on.
Yeah, I'm very quickly realising that.
Now, you obviously, as part of the British squad, are into a enormously successful program, and I'm an outsider. I don't know how it runs, but I'm guessing it runs on very organized lines, and everyone is pretty much told what they're doing and how. Can you give us a little insight into what a day in the life of a man in the heavyweight men's squad coached by Jurgen looks like when you roll up at Caversham at 7:55 on a cold winter's morning? What happens?
Well, first of all, we don't roll up at 7:55. I may have done on a few occasions, but I was definitely got a dressing down when I did because I was usually late. So yeah, I mean, training, a normal morning starts at 7:30. A morning, so Tuesday morning in the middle of winter, we would always start off in the gym. So we'd start off at 7:30 in the gym at Bisham. We would do some stretching. By 8 o'clock, the session would start, and then we have a strength conditioning coach. So that weight session would be probably run for, depending on who you are and how quickly you get through it, an hour to an hour and a half session. We'd then jump in the car, drive across to Caversham, get some breakfast. In the last couple of years of me being in the team, we had a brilliant chef called Omar. If you want to follow him, I think he's on, I'm not very good with Twitter names, but Eat Fresh, or I'll tweet it out later. But yeah, he's an amazing chef. Was probably made a massive difference to the team in the last couple of years of build up to the Olympics. So we'd have some food, then by about 10:30, 11 o'clock, we'd be out in the water. Usually be a long UT2 session or with some UT1s in it. So nice, steady, for people who are watching who aren't involved in the rowing lingo. UT2 is kind of going out for a nice long jog. So we probably do 20 kilometers. It's kind of a normal standard Jurgen session. Come in, have some more food, have a little bit of a rest, and then we'd be back on the water by about 1:30, 2 o'clock, all on the row machines. Another favourite of Jurgen's. Again, depending on what day it would be another long, steady one, 16 kilometres or 20 kilometres. And then you're usually finished by 3:30, 4 o'clock. Get home, have a sleep, recover, and then get up, have your evening, dinner, off to bed.
So was it hard to not be part of the decision-making process in a system like that? You just have to do as you're told. Is that the way it is?
Yes, that is the way it is. And it is definitely, I mean, for me, it's something I really struggle with. I think as an athlete, I've always been happy to do whatever I'm told, but I like to understand why I'm doing something. I think you get two types of athletes. You get athletes that are happy, who will do what they're told and just get on with it and never question and quite. But then you also get athletes that ultimately will do what they're told, but they just like to understand the thought process behind it. And I think as long as you can explain to them in a way that ultimately, as long as the way you explained it tells them that by doing this training or doing whatever it is will make the boat go faster, they'll happily get on board and do it. And I think for me, I've always been that type of athlete where I like to just understand and feel like I'm part of decision-making progress. And I think for me, the fact that in the team, it is a very prescriptive, and you don't get that say in it. It's something I always struggle with, and when I eventually appreciated that actually these decisions were out of my control, and that wasn't my job in large respects. My job was to do the training I was asked to do, make myself the best athlete I could be, and make whatever boat I'm in go as fast as possible. And actually, it was Jurgen and the coach's job and the management job to write the program, make the decisions. And once I accepted that, I think it definitely for me made it a lot easier. But it is something that took me a long time to really fully come around to, because I said it wasn't that any of the decisions in terms of training, any of the decisions that I was against, it was just the fact I wanted to understand it more. But that isn't how it works in the British team.
So what is Jurgen Grobler like as a coach?
I think my experiences of Jurgen is that obviously I've had a long experience of him as my chief coach, and I've had a much shorter experience of him as my personal coach. Obviously, he coached our boat going into Rio, and I think that the two sides of it are quite different. You do definitely, when he's your personal coach, see a different side to him. When he's the chief coach, obviously he's the guy writing the training program. I think he's seen as a real taskmaster, which he is. I mean, I think he gets us to where the success by the fact that he trains us very hard, and he develops us to be very tough mentally and physically by the training program. But then obviously having him as your personal coach, there is a softer side to him where sometimes he'll put his arm around you and kind of if he thinks he needs it, he'll take a more softer approach. And so I think there's definitely two sides to him, and I think our relationship as a team has its ups and downs, but I think obviously, so there's a chief coach and a personal coach. They're kind of two different jobs, and you do see two different sides to them.
Give an example of something that he really coached you on the water that made a change that you remember.
I think Jurgen's coaching is very, when he's coaching you on the water, it's very different to how people probably perceive it to be. Jurgen is very much, he likes to work on feel. He likes to work on relaxation. I think a lot of people just see him as somebody who is constantly cracking the whip, and suddenly you have to train harder and go faster. And that actually really isn't the case. A lot of the time he's actually saying, okay, look, we don't need to, that speed is good enough. He will push us on when we need to. But I think he also is, his style of coaching is very much about trying to get the best out of you and your way of rowing and your body, rather than trying to have this manufactured way of rowing and try and make everybody fit that mold. He likes to, one of his favourite phrases is that you have your fingerprint, and that is you, and that's something that can't be changed, but we're trying to get the best out of your fingerprint. So I think his style of coaching is different to how people perceive it, and it's something that I said when he's been my personal coach, I really like. It's I think it's a style that is all about trying to get the best out of you and what you're capable of doing, rather than having this fixed idea in his head of the way you should row and try and make everybody bend and mold into that. I think he did used to always say that you can't bend an old tree, and I'm not sure if I was the old tree, but I think he appreciates that we're all different, and you can't just have this one fixed mold that everybody's going to fit.
Understood. Now, as an athlete, you've had 2 or is it 3 rowing clubs in your career?
2.
So what made you move to Leander?
So I originally started rowing for Leander when I was still at Northwich. My first ever Henley, I raced as Leander in the Forley quad. At the time, when I did the Forley, obviously I was up in Northwich. I didn't really have 3 other juniors that were wanting to race Henley. So me and 3 of the other top scullers in the country decided that we put a quad together, and we rowed 3 of us rowed as Leander. One of us rowed as Tiffin School. He stayed and rowed as his school. At that time, you weren't allowed to have multiple clubs entered, so I think we needed to row all under one rowing club, and I think Leander was obviously a club that provided us with his boat and facilities. And then having joined Leander, then when I then moved down to Henley to train with the national team, it seemed to make sense that that I joined Leander. I couldn't be I couldn't really row for Northwich still, as I wasn't training there. And at the time when I first moved down and joined the national team, part of the national team was based out of Henley. Jurgen had his group that was based at Henley. There was also another group that was based down at Hammersmith. But I moved down and joined Jurgen's group at Leander. So I think it worked out quite nicely as a nice fit. And I think the thing with Northwich that I've always appreciated, and I think that's so great about the club, is that they were always very supportive about the fact that I was going to move on and row for a bigger club, as you like. I think they appreciated, obviously, if I wanted to pursue my career in rowing, that would have to be a natural step, and rather than ever try and hold on to me, they really supported that. They always said, okay, look, we're going to come and watch and celebrate you racing as a Northwich athlete, but we know that that you're going to have to move on and row for another club, and they've never ever tried to stop that, and they've actually encouraged that, rather than, I think, they've tried to hold on to me too long. And I think for me, that's one of the things that's so great about the club, is that I can still go back and really support me as a Northwich athlete and always be behind me. And I think it was just a natural step to move to Leander.
Fabulous. Now, you've seen the development of the world-class start program, now called the START program, which talent identifies young athletes, I think from age 14 upwards, and tries to fast track them into national teams. What's your view on how successful this is from the point of view of British rowing?
It's a difficult question. I think obviously for me, I wasn't a world-class start athlete. I don't entirely agree with the fast tracking system. I think that ultimately you should provide the facilities for everybody to have an opportunity, and then the cream will rise to the top. I think it's if you. I think there was a scheme called Project Awesome, which where clubs could apply for money, and then the British Rowing would help provide facilities and boats for them, and then people would go into schools, and it would really just give a lot more people opportunity to try rowing. And I think for me that was a really great scheme. I think for me, I really like to see just the opportunity for everybody to have a go at rowing rather than being so selective. I'm sure they will argue that the world class start has been successful and it has been at the top level, but I also just want to see rowing as a sport progress, and I think having more people have the opportunity to try rowing who might not necessarily get the chance to rowing, I think for me is something that I personally thought was a really great scheme and a really good thing for the sport. I do think that obviously the world class start has been successful. There's been some top people in rowing, and I guess it's just a different way of giving people an opportunity to really try and experience and get involved in the sport that they might not already have had. And I think there obviously has been success. I think there are athletes within the team, but I obviously have never been involved in that system, so it's difficult for me to really comment on that. But I think anything that gives more people an opportunity to try rowing, I think is ultimately always a good thing.
Yeah, I definitely support that. And from my personal experience, the thing that I hear what you say about the delight that you had as a young man at Northwich and the fun that that club created in the environment encouraged you. And one of the things that I observe about the START program is that the athletes are often affiliated to a club but don't train with a club. So they don't have that chance of forming those friendships of larking around on the water, messing around in boats. And as a consequence, if they finish rowing without getting into the national team, they often don't stay with the sport in a club. They just quit. Do you think that's fair?
Yes, I do. And I think, I think you are probably we have very well described what I think my concerns are with the program as well. I would personally prefer it, as this is my opinion, that I think it would be better if it was affiliated to a club, and it was more a case of giving people an opportunity to be part of the club and actually experience being part of the clubs and rowing in a club environment. Because for me as well, being part of the club, going to the local regattas taught me so much about just general boat handling skills, being able to organise myself, the fact that it was down to me to get the boat rig, get it at the start. You never babysat, you never had anyone holding a hand. It was a case of, from an early age, look, this is your time, you need to get your boat down, you need to work out how to get yourself to the start, how to do your warm up. It does teach you a lot. So I think it would almost be better if it was affiliated to the club. It was more of a going around giving people an opportunity, saying, okay, I think identifying the people that would be good at rowing, and then allowing them the opportunity to go down to their local club, put the money in the clubs, and then ultimately if those athletes are successful and talented enough and do the right training, they will then make the national team naturally anyway. I don't know, to have them separate from the clubs, I think is, for me, or a flaw in the system, and I think it's much better as part of the clubs, because then hopefully they will get a great experience of the sport, they get a great experience of rowing, and whether they make the team or not, I definitely don't think that would slow them down in terms of making the team. I think you'd still find that the people who've got what it takes and got the talent and got the determination will still make the team, as a lot of other rowers have done. But if they don't, then they'll have that club experience, they'll hopefully love the sport, and we'll get more people in rowing. And I think ultimately for me, that's the most important thing, that as a sport we grow and we get better and we give more people an opportunity to get out there and be part of it, because I think it's a great sport, and I'd just like to see more people doing it and more people competing.
Well, you and I are very like-minded there. The one thing that I notice in my daily life at work is that I have a couple of things around the office that make it clear that I'm a rower. And I had a meeting just this afternoon, man I'd never met before, came in for a meeting, and he goes, "Oh, who's the rower?" And I said, "Oh, it's me." And he said, "Oh," and he started telling me this long story about his novice year when he was at high school and how much he enjoyed it, and all the things that he and his crew did. And it was clear that the memory was really vibrant, and he smiled throughout telling the story. And I think that is something that's very different about rowing compared with many other sports. It builds these friendships that are lifelong. And I've not experienced that in other even team sport environments that I've been in. And I don't know quite why, but I certainly know that I've seen it when I've visited rowing clubs abroad, as well as experienced it happily for myself, and then tried to create the same environment when I've been a coach or in a leadership position and able to influence how a squad runs itself. And I think that community feeling of being part of something bigger is very, very powerful and very hard to put your finger on. But anyone who's experienced it will probably nod their head and go, yeah, I think, yeah, it was like that.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree. I think rowing is a funny sport, and it's a sport it's quite hard to explain why it's so addictive. But I think anyone who's tried it will appreciate it. I mean, for me, whenever I go and speak to anyone, a lot of people ask me why I enjoy it and why I find it addictive. And the only way I can really ever explain it is I mean, obviously on paper, it is hard to explain, and initially it's hard to really put your finger on it. We go backwards, we have early mornings, we train in the cold winter weather. To ever win a race, you have to really push yourself and hurt yourself. It's hard, but I think ultimately, for me, what it always boils down to is the fact that because it is so hard and because you have to put so much into it, it's a very honest sport. I mean, I know from even having won the Olympics to not doing any training for a month, suddenly you're nowhere near the athlete that you were, and you can't beat people that you probably have normally been substantially quicker than. So you have to put the work in. It's a very honest sport. There's just no way around it. But I think because you have to work so hard at it, that when you get the success from it, it's so much more rewarding. And I think because of that, people in the sport of rowing are very like-minded. You've got a lot of very determined, like-minded people, no matter what level you're at, whether it be your novices or internationals. You know, to make those steps and improve, you've had to spend those hours on the water, and so then when things click and when you make those changes, it's just so much more rewarding, because it always takes so much time and effort to put into it. And I think, yeah, it then breeds very like-minded people. And I think a lot of people, no matter what level, can appreciate that, because it really doesn't change. It's the same at every level, and every level to make any step in rowing, you have to put the work in. So I think that's the nice thing about it, that everyone can understand and appreciate it, no matter what level they're at. It really is no different at international, or whether you're winning the Olympics too. It is when you're just learn to stay afloat, you have to put the hours in and train and to try and make it better.
I once had a conversation with someone and tried to explain that, and the way I went about it was by saying, it is as hard for me as it is for Steve Redgrave. And they just looked at me like, nah. And you go, yeah, actually, my capabilities are far less than him, but it's just as hard.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think it never gets any easier, you just get faster. The ergos and the training hurts just as much as it ever did. It's just that your score is a bit better. I think that's that is the beauty about it. That a lot of people say, "Oh, does it still hurt when you get?" But yeah, it does. It's just as hard as it ever was. It's just that you're now going a little bit quicker than you used to go. But that's the satisfaction of it. There's nothing as painful as horrible as ergos are. There's nothing more satisfying than when you get PB on your ergo test, because you know to do that you've really had to test yourself and put yourself in a place that you weren't sure whether you're capable of being. So it does give you that ultimate satisfaction and ultimate reward for the effort you've put in.
We're just going to take a short break now to hear from a sponsor's message. The British Masters Rowing Championships is on June the 10th and 11th in the UK. And Row Perfect is offering a buy and collect on service. So if you want to treat yourself with some goodies from the Row Perfect shop, you can buy online in the online store using a discount code, which will deduct all of the postage. The code is Masters Champs 17, so MASTERS CHAMPS 17. Put that in at the checkout and it will remove all the shipping costs from your purchase, and you can collect your goodies from us at the trade stand on June the 10th. Paul Dolman will be at the Masters Champs, but he will not be there on the 11th. So if you're only in an event on the 11th, beware, get a crewmate to collect it for you. Now, back to Matt Langridge. Matt, British rowing is very much a kind of closed system. They're probably one of the more secretive international programs out there, now that so many of the well-known athletes choose social media, choose to share videos of them training, to show their splits, to explain what they're working on. Is it going to hinder the advance of the British rowing system, the fact that they're very introverted by comparison with others, or actually are the others disadvantaging themselves by telling the world and their fans what they're up to?
I've always thought not. The secrecy in British rowing, I think, I don't know what the rest of the world does in terms of training, and obviously, yes, you see the stuff that gets posted. You obviously see stuff that various other athletes post, but you don't really know what they're doing, the type of training they're doing. You don't know what their day-to-day is. You know what they've allowed you to see, but I've always been really careful to know that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're doing. I think for me, there's no major secrets that we have in British rowing. I think the training we do is probably very similar to what everybody else is doing, and the type of training that they do. I mean, for me, Jurgen has always had a saying when it comes to obviously putting stuff out there, that we never want to give our competitors a reason to train harder. And I, for a long time, didn't really understand this, because for me, I always felt, well, I'm sure our competitors are training as hard as they possibly can, because ultimately I'm sure they want to beat us as much as they possibly do. It was only actually when I was watching the Usain Bolt documentary, and I was watching it, and Usain Bolt, I think, was just before London, was really struggling. It was either London or Rio. He was really struggling with his training and was lacking motivation. He'd won everything. He didn't really know if he was still going to do it. And then Justin Gatlin put out we did an interview, and I think in the interview he said, "Oh, I'm going to beat Usain Bolt." And Usain Bolt suddenly said, "Oh," that gave him the motivation. And I'm sure Justin Gatlin then was kicking himself that he did that interview, because up to that point it looked like he lacked the motivation, and suddenly that for him was a big turning point, and that gave him the motivation he needed. So after seeing that, I then went, okay, well, maybe Jurgen is right, and maybe there is a reason. So I guess now I'm a little bit less sure. There's no secrets in terms of what we do. I don't know why we're as secretive as we are, but I think yeah, in terms of the training, we do weights, as I'm sure most people do. We do training in waters, I'm sure everyone does, and we do lots of ergos. I don't think there are any secrets really. So I mean, for me, I've always been quite relaxed about it. Obviously, we as a stance on the team, we don't post our scores, we don't post our training, and that's fine by me. But equally, I don't have a problem if somebody did or somebody wanted to, and I don't. Personally, as an athlete, I'm always very cautious when you see to read too much into what people are putting out there, because ultimately they're choosing to put it out there. So it's never full insight into what people are really doing. I mean, I would love as an athlete to. One of the things I've always said I'd love to do is actually, when I'm retired, go around and train with different squads and actually see how different it is, and see whether it is different or whether it's exactly the same. So I think only then, by being involved in it and actually training with the teams and spending a couple of weeks with each team, would you then fully realise kind of differences and appreciate it. Because I definitely don't buy into what is put out there and posted online, because that's been put out there for a reason. They're choosing to do it. No one ever puts out a video where they're rowing badly in really terrible water and it's going terribly. It's all his beautiful, flat, rowing perfectly video. So nobody ever puts out an ergo score that's gone terribly. They only ever put out the good ones. So I think it's a typical thing of social media that you have to be careful with, is that people only ever want to put out the good stuff and put out the good impressions. Nobody ever puts out the bad days.
Very true. Now, hard question here. I spoke with Mahi Drysdale yesterday, and he told me that he's heading back into training with the hope of being fit in October and ready to start another Olympic cycle. Where are you at?
Officially, I'm still just taking time out. I think for me, I've been in the team a long time. I wanted to. I knew I didn't want to compete in this season. I knew that I wanted to take some time away and think about it. Going into Rio, I was fairly sure that I wasn't going to continue, but I still wanted to give myself that time just to make sure it's the right decision. You only get to. You're limited on the amount of times you can go. Obviously, I can't wait 20 years and then decide to come out of retirement and give it another go. So you only get one chance at it, and I think I wanted to make sure that if I was ready to hang up my oars, it was the right decision. But I always said for me that I wanted to give it till the summer to make that decision. It's very easy to say that you don't want to be part of it in the cold, wet winter. When you know that the majority of the training is spent on the rowing machines. For me, it was always about the summer, it was about the racing. That was the bit I loved. So I wanted to give it to, wait till the summer season started, wait till I'd watch some racing, and then see whether that hunger and that bug to carry on was still there or not. And as of yet, we've only had really one race, so I think I'll probably give it a little bit longer before I finally make my decision. But I just wanted to see how much the hunger was still there to carry on training and carry on racing.
So transitioning out of being a professional athlete and into the rest of your life is a major challenge. I was privileged to meet Geroit Towie, who started a business called Crossing the Line Sport, which is about athlete retirement and encouraging organisations such as British Rowing to provide training and coaching to assist athletes when they transition. Is there anything like that already in place for long-standing athletes such as yourself?
So in the British team, we do have a athletes careers advisor who she's great. She's really good at helping you make that transition. She helps you with your CV and helps you with job interviews. I think ultimately though it comes down to you because you're the only one who can decide what's going to motivate you. And I think as athletes, it's really difficult because you've been so focused on one thing for so long, and you're so focused on that you don't give, you don't look too much into what you're going to life after rowing. You see that date of that Olympic final and nothing beyond that. So when it comes and goes, suddenly you're left with that decision and left to work it out. I think for me, I'm quite lucky in that I do have I do have something else that I'm very ambitious about and that I really want to do, which has helped to give me a new focus. But I think a lot of people do struggle, and it takes them a long time to work out what it is that motivates them and going out. I mean, people always say about going into the real world. Well, you're in the real world anyway. So, but I think it does take a while, and I think some people find it a lot quicker, and some people take a long time looking. But I think it's definitely a hard transition. But I think for me, I've been quite lucky that I think I already know. So,
tell us then about your cycling plan.
My cycling plan. I wouldn't say it's a cycling plan. I mean, for me, cycling is something I've always really enjoyed. I would have wished we'd done a lot more. We don't do a lot of cycling in the British team. I know other teams do a lot more of it, but we only do one training camp a year where we take the bikes and we do a bit of cycling. Whereas I've always enjoyed cycling and always enjoyed being on the bike, and would have always liked to have done more cycling as part of my training. So I knew that I wanted to stay competitive and in shape, whether I carried on rowing or not. So I always had the idea that rather than carrying on rowing and see myself get worse and worse, I'd want to go and do something where I can see myself improve and get better and still feel like I can improve it. So I decided to take up cycling. So at the moment, I'm just doing fun. I'm just training when I can and doing some racing and done a few time trials. So I've been quite successful domestically. But yeah, at the moment, I wouldn't say it's a plan. It's just more a case of enjoying it, enjoying the sport, kind of finding out how good I could be and see how many races I can win.
Well,
but I've no illusions of being the next, of going to the Olympics in cycling. I think I know how hard it is and how long it's taken to get to that level in one sport. And I think for me to think that I could just make the switch into another sport would, I think is unrealistic. I know that obviously Hamish is giving it a good go. I think he's obviously had the idea in mind before Rio, and I think he's obviously doing a very much better job of it than I am. But I think he's obviously had a much more definite plan in place, and he's made that transition. He's lost quite a lot of weight, which obviously helps in cycling. I haven't done that, so I think he's probably much more suited to making that change than I am. But I think mine's just seeing how far I can go and seeing how much fun I can have, and just I kind of push it as far as I can. But I think it's probably just more of a fun thing than anything else.
So Gareth HP on Twitter, I hope that answers your question. And Hamish Bond apparently is heading over to Europe in the next couple of weeks to race with the team. I think time trials are his big thing. So we're just coming to the end of our chat, Matt, and I was wondering if I could talk to you a bit about the racing format. Rowing is terribly predictable. We do 2,000 metres or 1,000 metres or river rowing and head races. Do you think there's a future for the international side of the sport to develop new formats like cycling has, for example?
Yeah, I think there definitely is, and I think it's something that we in rowing need to explore. I do think we can change the distance without really changing the sport. I think, for instance, if we came down to 1,000 metres, it would give us a lot more venue options. Obviously, a major problem, certainly with international rowing, is finding 2,000 metre lakes in suitable locations. 2,000 metre lakes tend to be way out of cities or sometimes difficult to get to. Whereas if we brought it down to 1,000 metres, then hopefully we could have use more lakes close to the cities and make it more accessible for spectators, and to kind of build the sport. And I definitely think it's something we need to explore, different formats. And yeah, I think for me it's anything that again makes the sport more accessible for people to try, but also for spectators and to get involved in and enjoy, I think is always a good thing. And I think we are at that point in rowing where we do need to try different ideas and different venues, and maybe we start off, obviously we have super sprints, and I think there are ideas coming forward, and hopefully more different distances and regattas available. But I think maybe at international level, at the top level, we do also need to look at the distance just to make it more spectator friendly. Because I think the main thing for me is being able to put it on in venues that are more accessible, kind of closer, more make transport easier.
That's great advice. Thank you very much. So please, Matt, tell the listeners where they can get hold of you and find out more about you.
Well, if they'd like to get hold of me, I do have a website, which is mattlangridge.co.uk. So yeah, anyone can go on or follow me on Twitter. But if you go through the website, then there is a link there to where you can contact me. So anyone can contact me on the website or follow me on Twitter, which is Matt Langridge 8 or Matt_8.
It's Matt_Langridge 8. I can tell you. I know.
Thank you. I should know, but obviously I never tweet myself, so it's hard to remember.
Matt, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your energy. And for everybody else, if you've enjoyed this episode of Rowing Chat, you can help us too. Tell your friends and go on to Stitcher or iTunes and write a review so that Row Perfect and the Rowing Chat podcast can get better known by more people around the world. Till next time, goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.